This is Hiawatha with a peace pipe. Hiawatha was a well-respected pre-colonial Native American leader. In 1964, the city of Ironwood had a 52-foot tall statue of Hiawatha built in an effort to draw more tourists to the area. It is billed as the world's tallest and largest Indian. If you do find yourself in Ironwood, don't leave town without your very own Stormy Cromer cap. What's a Stormy Cromer cap? Well, here's Chris Merrill to explain.
George Stormy Cromer was a pro baseball player. He sucked at baseball. And after he got done with the profession, he did like they used to do in the old days. He got a real job. He became a railroad engineer. And a railroad engineer in the North got very chilly, especially on the ears. This made Stormy Cromer very cranky. That's why prior to being an engineer, he was just known as George, but then he got cranky, so they called him Stormy. I assume it had something to do with storming things. So Stormy says to his wife, Ida, who was quite a looker, because frankly, she hooked up with a pro ball player and they never settle. So he says, Ida, my ears is cold. So he handed her his engineer cap and he said, can you give it some earmuffs? And she did. Now, what's interesting about the Stormy Cromer hat is a lot of people get confused. They think that the flaps actually fold down, but they don't. See, I can show you here. But the hat, it unties, but it doesn't actually come down. What happens is that merely loosens it, and you pull the sides down over your ears, like so. And then if you want to, tie it back up. Isn't that exciting? This is exactly what Grandpa used to do when he hunted wearing this exact cap. The problem is, when other people thought he was a deer, he couldn't hear them shooting. So that didn't work out very well for Grandpa. Fortunately, the people he shot that he hunted with were drunks. And so they never actually hit him, which was fortuitous, because otherwise the hat would have stains on it and be very difficult to pass down.
Don't flinch, don't fall, and hit the line hard.
For me, I was most excited to visit Marquette to see the county courthouse, as former President Teddy Roosevelt famously spent a portion of his 1913 spring here. The original Rough Rider filed a suit against a reporter from the Iron Ore newspaper for describing Roosevelt as a drunkard. To defend his reputation, Roosevelt felt he had no choice but to sue the reporter. In the end, Roosevelt won the case, and at his own request was awarded just 6 cents. Marquette is also the largest city in the UP and home of Northern Michigan University. Now, if you do go to Marquette, remember this, just 40 minutes down the road is arguably one of the most spectacular natural wonders you will ever see. No video can do justice to Pictured Rocks. Pictured Rock derives its name from the 15-mile stretch of colorful sandstone cliffs near Munising. The cliffs are up to 200 feet above lake level and have been naturally sculptured into shallow caves, arches, and other formations. The colors in the cliffs are created by the large amounts of minerals in the rock. The U.S. Congress made Pictured Rocks the first officially designated national lakeshore in the United States in 1966. I highly recommend a pontoon boat or a Pictured Rock cruise. Probably best ways to see Pictured Rocks. Now, just so you know, these are just a few of the things that you can find in the UP. The truth is, there was a lot I didn't get to. Pasties, the jam-making monks, or even the 1-pound sweet rolls you'll find in Lance. Regardless, I've got you started. Now go plan your UP vacation.
So in 1903, Stormy made this hat. All the other engineers in the train business at the time said, Stormy, that's a great idea. We want one. So Stormy goes back to his wife, who evidently had nothing better to do except make babies and clean the house and make sure he had sandwiches for his long train rides. He says, I need more hats. So Ida, the looker, started making hats for all of Stormy's buddies, which is something that women wouldn't do nowadays. I can't even get them to bring us some chips or maybe refill the salsa during the Super Bowl. The good old days. So in 2003, Stormy was doing really well, and then they decided, wow, this is going like gangbusters. Let's actually start a clothing business, which was not very masculine, but he didn't really do the sewing. He just took the money, which was very masculine. Then he hired other women to do more sewing, and they did. So he moved the company to Milwaukee, and they expanded. and things were taking off. It was dynamite. Well, Stormy got old, and then Stormy died because that's what old baseball players do. And so in the 1960s, Stormy kicks the bucket. Business gets handed down to somebody else. Railroad is going the way of the railroad. And so the railroad hats weren't nearly as popular anymore. So after the 2000s rolled around, they decided we're going to shut the business down. This isn't going very well. In walks a dude from Ironwood, Michigan. And the guy says, I will buy your business from you for pennies on the dollar. And they said, pennies on the dollar sounds better than nothing on the dollar, which is what we're getting right now. So since then, hats have been made in Ironwood. Although, and let me read to you from the tag of this hat, which of course is authentic and not something that I got from Amazon specifically for this video. It actually says, made in USA in the Midwest of globally sourced materials. So it's kind of like your Ford. It might be assembled in Kansas City, but it was built in Mexico. So that's kind of the hats right now. They come from the outlet in Ironwood, Michigan. So even though it all started in Wisconsin, it's got 100 years of history in Wisconsin. Michiganders now like to say the Stormy Kromer hat is a Michigan tradition. And actually, if you go to the UP, you'll see a lot of people who put on the Stormy hats right before they walk outside in the dead of winter to use the toilet because there's no plumbing. And that's the history of the Stormy Kromer hat.